What's up, everybody? Sorry for the delay in getting out this episode, but I had some stuff to take care of. So anyway, I've went over the Warrior, and now I'm going to talk about the Guardian real quick. I'm going to go over all the traits that they showed in all the lines, discuss what looks good for PvE, what looks viable, what I think looks optimal, and at the end, I will suggest what could possibly be a meta build based on what they changed. As with the Warrior video, small caveat is that I know the numbers could change, the traits could change entirely, the traits could still move around, nothing's set in stone, yada yada yada. This is just my best guess based on what they've shown so far. So without any further delay, let's get into Zeal. Alright, so Zeal. Looking at the minors, we have a trait that drops a symbol when you're hit below a certain health. Symbols cause vuln. And symbols do increase damage and have a chance to burn. All of those are very good. A lot of the theme of Zeal is increasing symbol damage, and we'll see what kind of direction that will push us. At Adept, we really want to be focusing on Fiery Wrath. As always, 10% damage increases for an easy to get boost are great, especially at the Adept level. One thing I do want to say is it does appear that with burning stacking in intensity rather than duration, and most things that inflict burning being very low duration, this isn't a gimme, as much a gimme as it is in the current meta. There's a very good chance that unless your party has multiple sources of burning, or your build has multiple sources of burning, that this is not going to be a 100% uptime trait the way it is now. So just be on the lookout. This trait may be getting a slight nerf. The Zealous Scepter is interesting, but it's not anything to write home about. Not anywhere near as good as Fiery Wrath. At Master, we have Blinding Jeopardy. Immobilizing or blinding a foe also applies vulnerability to them. That is really good in conjunction with Sword and Focus because they have built-in blinds. Zealous Blade, greatsword damage increased by 5%. Greatsword cooldowns greatsword cooldowns are reduced, and you heal a little bit. Getting the greatsword cooldowns merged with Zealous Blade is really, really good, as we'll see when we get to other traits that have synergy with the symbol. Getting to use the symbol more often is going to be a big part of Guardian PvE. Plus, we get to Whirling Wrath more often, which is, of course, great. And Kindled Zeal, gain condition damage based on your power. I don't think that's going to be too relevant for PvE. At Grandmaster, it used to be Guardian had nothing good happening at Grandmaster, and now they have a lot good happening at Grandmaster. First we have Expeditious Spirit, which is a spirit weapon boost, which we can safely ignore, except for the... well, no, we can ignore it. Never mind. Shattered Aegis, that is more of like a PvP thing. And Symbolic Avenger, this is the bread and butter of the Zeal line. This is what it's all about, and this is what Guardian should be focusing on in PvE when this patch goes live. You deal 20% more damage to enemies standing in your symbols. Simply put, this is absurd. Anytime you have an easy-to-make 20% damage mod anywhere, you take it and you build your entire build around it, because it is almost impossible to get a 20% damage mod that can be up nearly 100% of the time, that doesn't ask you to make huge sacrifices. Using symbols, which are big DPS boosts in and of themselves, is not a huge sacrifice. Look at the minors. The minors mean that your symbols inflict lots of vuln, they inflict burning, they do decent damage, and they give you 20% more personal DPS. Symbolic Avenger is very, very good, and it is the selling point of the Zeal line and has great synergy with the rest of the line. So I like that very much. So that's it for Zeal. Let's see if we can find anything similarly as good in Radiance. Alright guys, so previously Radiance was one of the go-to trait lines for Guardian. It had precision attached to it, which is always good, and it had some really powerful traits. So we will see where we are with that. The first two minor traits, Justice is Blind and Renewed Justice, are the same as they were previously. They are both very powerful, and enables you to spam your Virtue of Justice when fighting trash mobs and have a blind on command when needed. These are both very powerful. However, it should be noted that Justice's blind was really powerful in the meta before Thief became a commonplace thing on most teams. I know when most people were doing like heavies only fractals and all they had was like 3 warriors and 2 guardians, Justice's blind was doing a lot of heavy lifting and keeping the trash mobs blind. But at this point, with a Thief with black powder, Justice's blind isn't quite as mandatory as it was before. So do keep that in mind when evaluating how useful it is. The new one is Radiant Power. Attacks against burning foes have increased chance to critically hit 25%. That's huge. That's a very, very big thing. And it is a strong attractant to this line. One thing I want to note, the same thing I said for Fiery Wrath, burning is not going to be as easy to achieve as it was before. Guardian does have a lot of traits that inflict burning, but the duration of burning is still pretty low on all of the things that inflict burning. So there is a very good chance this is not a 100% uptime ability, although it will be a very high uptime ability. All right, moving on. Adept level, Healer's Retribution. Gain Retaliation when using a heal skill. That's pretty poor for PvE. Inner Fire, gain Fury when you strike a foe that has burning stacks over the threshold. This seems like it could be good on a 10-second cooldown. Especially, this seems more like a PvP thing, I want to say, or like an open world PvE. I don't know if it's 100% going to be worthwhile since you get Fury from other people in your group, but it seems decent in PvP. And Right Hand Strength, which is somewhat redundant with Radiant Power, but critical hit chance with one-handed weapons is increased, and sword skills recharge faster. The sword skill cooldown isn't that big, but the increased critical chance is really good. Previously you would see that in a Berserker build to make one-handed sword sort of worth using in conjunction with Greatsword. With Radiant Power and that together, we're looking at almost, we're looking at a 40% critical hit boost with Fury 60. I see this now as transitioning more to a PvP build where you run either Cavaliers or Valkyries and you let Right Hand Strength and Radiant Power along with Fury from, say, Inner Fire give you that 60% chance to crit along with whatever runes or whatever you're running, maybe Runes of the Pack or Runes of Rage, to give you that extra crit chance. And that way you can spec to a pretty tanky Valkyrie or Cavalier spec and still have pretty good crit chance. Will Right-Handed Strength be as useful in PvE still? That remains to be seen, how they do traits and how they do the attribute points that we lose from the trait lines. Remains to be seen. At the Master level, we have Signet of Wrath. Extra condition damage, passive, not the greatest thing ever. Mobilize your target. Striking an enemy with just as active effects triggers Signet of Wrath. Yada yada yada. So the next thing is the next two are much more interesting. We have Retribution, gain increased damage while under the effects of retaliation 10%. This is worth paying attention to. A 10% damage boost with an easy to meet effect like retaliation is something to think about. One thing I want to warn you though is retaliation is not something that you have up 100% of the time. So this will be up a good percentage of the time. If you make your build based around it completely, you might have it up 60 to 70% of the time. In short fights, you could have it up quite a bit. But I think in any sort of decent length fight, or if you don't go out of your way to build your build around it, it's not going to be a permanent 10% damage increase, so don't be swayed too strongly by it. And the next one is super interesting, and there's a lot of people that are speculating on this one kind of wildly. Radiant Fire. Gain Zealot's Flame when you critically hit on a 6-second internal cooldown. Burning duration is increased. Burning duration increased is really cool, especially since a lot of our things proc based on having burning, and burning's harder to get these days. The reduced recharge of torch skills is kind of meh. The interesting thing is Zealot's Flame. So what it does is it burns nearby foes AoE around you. That's cool. The torch skill, after you light Zealot's Flame, allows you to throw the fire for a huge hit that hits about as hard as a Thief backstab. The question is, does this trait proccing give you the chance to throw the Zealot's Flame on a 6-second cooldown? If you're getting a free backstab, basically, on a 6-second cooldown, this trait is broken. It's Grandmaster level broken, beyond Grandmaster level broken. No one knows for sure if that's how it actually is going to behave. There's a lot of speculation. I would say it's so broken, if that's the case, that that's not how it's going to work, and that basically it exists only to inflict burning on people. We'll see. Grandmaster, Amplified Wrath, burning damage is increased. Burn enemies who attacks you block. Pretty meh. Perfect Inscriptions, that is just terrible, as it was before. And Radiant Retaliation, retaliation scales from condition damage. I'm not a fan of any of these. If I had to pick one of these, I would probably just take Amplified Wrath. None of these are very great in PvE. None of them I would recommend using. It's kind of a knock against the Radiance line that the Grandmasters are so weak. So that's it for Radiance. All in all, it's a strong line for PvE, but I think the strongest skills are the critical chance skills, both of which may or may not be useful. And I think Radiant Fire could be broken. If it's broken, then Radiance is definitely going to be meta. If it's not granting you Zealot's Fire, then it is not broken at all, and Retribution will be what we pick there. But that's it for Radiance. Let's move on to Zeal. Or not Zeal, I'm sorry. Let's move on to the next one, which is going to be Valor. Alright guys, so for Valor. Valor had its moment in the sun back during the altruistic healing meta when the game started. It's fallen out of favor. Let's see if there's anything here that might change things around. At the minor level, we have Valorous Defense. Gain Aegis when you are struck below the health threshold. No thank you. Courageous Return. Virtue of Courage is recharged when you resurrect an ally. No thank you for PvE. And gain Might when you block attacks. Again, that's nothing for PvE. So the minors, not off to a good start. None of them are particularly great. Adept, Strength of the Fallen. Lose conditions at a set time interval. Health degenerates slower while downed. Well, losing conditions is okay, but 1 every 10 seconds is nothing special, and down state traits are not something you want to be speccing your build into. Alright, Smiter's Boon. Smite conditions when you use a healing ability. Actually, not terrible. You proc all your skills that give you bonuses for meditations, which is good. You do damage, a lot of damage, rather, when you smite a condition. This trait's not terrible, but conditions are actually not a huge thing in PvE. In HOT, that might change. Conditions could become much more dangerous, that they could build more enemies with condition-based attacks, and that could be something to think about, but for right now, it's just kind of a meh trait. Focus Mastery, gain protection when using a focus ability. No thank you. Neither of those are anything worth taking in PvE. Next, Master Level. Stalwart Defender, gain additional toughness when wielding a shield. Shield ability recharge is reduced. Unfortunately, shields suck in PvE, so we don't use them. Strength in numbers. Nearby allies gain toughness based on your effective level. This is one of those great traits like Empowered Allies and Spotter, only this is by far the worst of them. AoE toughness is... I mean, it might be, if we ever got ridiculously challenging content, something that's worth thinking about, where you just need every possible party buff to survive and to beat the content. But right now, we just don't need strength in numbers. A skill or a trait that gives you vigor to your party is way more powerful than strength in numbers, so we look elsewhere. And Communal Defenses grant Aegis to allies when you block an attack. Again, that's sort of like a PvP thing and not really a PvE thing. Grandmaster level Altruistic Healing. Nothing has changed about this skill. It's the same skill it's always been. For keeping yourself up and sustained, it's actually pretty good. But for actually supporting your party, since it only heals you, it does nothing, which is why people stopped using it. Next, Monk's Focus. This is a PvP skill. It is a bunch of the meditation skills merged into one. I imagine that people that play Meditation Guardian in PvP are loving that. For PvE, not so great. And Retributive Armor, gain toughness for a period of time when blocking ends, gain ferocity based on your toughness. This was a minor trait. People took it. Sometimes you'd see builds that would go 2 into Valor just to take Retributive Armor. At the Grandmaster level, you really have to be playing a tanky build. Now, I did notice in Radiance, like I said, that there does seem to be a PvP build out there based around using those traits that give you extra crit chance. This is another one of those traits that encourages you to build a tanky build and gives you an additional crit chance. So I could see like a Cavaliers build utilizing all this to get up to like a 75% crit chance in PvP. And that could be good. But for PvE, it's not good. And if you've noticed, I have not said that one of these traits in this entire line is worthwhile for PvE. So this is unfortunately the end of my review of Valor for PvE. So here we have Honor. Honor was very popular early on in the game. It fell out of favor when people stopped using triple shout build in PvE. But it does appear that Honor is about to make a comeback big time in PvE. So let me explain to you guys why. At the minor level, we have Vigorous Precision, which is always a great trait. Vigor is super powerful. People underestimate how useful Vigor is. Vigor is a skill-based trait. The better you can dodge, the better Vigor is for you. If you're not a very experienced player and you eat a lot of attacks and you don't dodge properly, Vigor is not helpful to you. If you're a good player, Vigor is very helpful to you because you can dodge the attacks more. Simply put, Vigor is a trait that gets better the better you get at the game. I like Vigorous Precision. I think it's great. Selfless Daring, the end of your dodge roll heals nearby allies. This is actually pretty strong. It scales pretty well, and it's free. I wouldn't build a whole build around it, but hey, it's free. And Purity of Body, Virtue of Resolve, passive effect also regenerates endurance. Hey, that's pretty good. Additional endurance regeneration, in addition to your Vigor, means that Guardian's going to have really high endurance regeneration. I like it. It'll make playing Guardian easier and more fun for the players. Let's look at the traits. First up, we have, at the Adept level, Invigorated Bulwark. Gain increased healing power for a period of time each time you block an attack while wielding a mace. Stacks up to 10 times. This is not good. This is not special. The next sentence, however, is special. Mace abilities have reduced recharge. They didn't tell us how much. We can assume 20% because that's what everything is. 20% reduced mace recharge is really good. Having the block on reduced recharge is strong. Even more strong is having the most important part, the symbol on reduced recharge. As we talked about in the Zeal line, symbols are going to be absolutely amazing. They give burning, they give vuln, they do damage, they give you your they boost your damage. Having reduced recharge on your symbol skills is crucial, and this does it. The healing part, we don't care about that. It's nice, whatever. It's a free bonus, but we would take this even if all it said was mace abilities have reduced recharge. So the next thing is creates a shield. It's Protective Reviver. It's a reviving skill. We don't care about it. The next one is Symbol of Protection. Create a symbol that gives protection to you and your allies when you take falling damage. That's not great either. So Protective Reviver and Symbol of Protection are bad. Invigorated Bulwark is awesome because it gives our mace symbol cooldown. Master level, Honorable Staff. Boon duration increased while wielding a staff. Staff recharges are reduced. Well, once people start using staff in anything other than open world PvE farms, let me know. Pure of Heart, Aegis heals when it blocks. This is trivial for PvE. Next up, Empowering Might. You and your allies gain might when you land a critical hit, 5 seconds, on a 1-second internal cooldown. I was really hoping that this was going to have its cooldown removed, and it was going to be made a Grandmaster, so it would be basically an identical trait to Phalanx Strength for Warrior. And you could maybe have the Guardian be the might generator for your party and have the Warrior go full out balls to the wall DPS. Unfortunately, we're not getting that. That said, there is a place for Empowering Might. A Phalanx Strength Warrior, even if you go all out with boon duration, is only going to be able to do about 18 to 22 of the might for the party. Empowering Might does help. It will fill in the blanks. It's not a completely wasted trait. It's not way over. It's not underrated. It's not overrated. It's useful and will be good. Good trait. Grandmaster level, pure of voice. All our shout traits compacted into one. There are times, I suppose, when you need lots of Aegises, like if you were fighting Melandru in a Ra P4 with a low man party. Yeah, sure, I would go ahead and take pure of voice, but for the most part, you don't really need it. Writ of Persistence. Now this is money. Symbols last longer, are larger, and heal allies. The healing's nice. I mean, whatever. It helps people keep their scholar buff up. That's fine. What's awesome is the duration increase makes all symbols last 2 seconds longer. This means all symbols you have will do an additional 2 ticks of damage. They'll do an additional 6 stacks of vuln, and they'll have an additional 2 chances to inflict burning, and they will last longer, which will give you 20% more of your DPS for that much longer. In combination with the Greatsword cooldown trait, the Mace cooldown trait, and the symbols lasting longer, we should have a very high symbol uptime, and this is part of what makes that happen. Writ of Persistence is a really, really powerful trait, and I expect us to be making quite a bit of use of it. Lastly in this line, Force of Will, you have increased vitality. Healing effectiveness to other allies is increased based on a percentage of your vitality. So I guess if you want to roleplay as a healer, this is the trait you'll take. I do not and will not roleplay as a healer, so I will not be taking Force of Will. Alright, so Virtues. Virtues was a huge part of the PvE meta. Most of the Guardian builds that people played went at least 2 into Virtues, oftentimes going all the way to 5. Does Virtue still have what it takes? Let's take a look. The minor level, activating your Virtues gives you some boons. This has always been the case. This continues to be a useful trait. So not much needs to be said there. Next minor is Virtue of Retribution. Gain retaliation when you activate a virtue. Retaliation you apply lasts longer. This is sort of the merging of 2 traits. The duration increase, or the duration decreased, I don't understand how that works. I imagine it's supposed to be duration increased. They just messed up on their templating. Shame on you, Annette. Shame on you. It will help with the 10% trait. I imagine that that's better for PvP than it is for PvE, where you'll want that 10% damage trait for a meditation build. If that retaliation radiance line becomes a thing in PvE, this is obviously going to be a very powerful minor trait, but I suspect it's going to be even more powerful in PvP. And lastly, Power of the Virtuous. Deal extra damage for each boon you have. Virtues recharge faster. It's a combination of 2 traits. The increased damage per boon seems good as usual. This is going to be anywhere between a 3 to 6% damage boost on the average. I'll take a 6% damage boost any day. Good stuff. Alright, Adept level. Unscathed Contender. This hasn't changed. Deal more damage while under the effects of Aegis. Damage increase 20%. Simply put, a 20% damage mod at the Adept level is very, very good. Anytime that ANET gives us a 20% damage mod at that level, you know it's something that they don't think you're going to be able to keep up 100% of the time. Certain dungeons, you will be able to keep that up 100% of the time, no questions asked. Other dungeons, you will not. This trait will go from super powerful in certain dungeons to weak in others, and it rewards Guardian play skill because certain times where it would be challenging to keep this up, it's easier if you know what you're doing. So Unscathed Contender, great trait. We like it. Retaliatory Subconscious. Gain retaliation and Aegis whenever you are CC'd. We don't care about that in PvE. Master of Consecrations. Consecrations last longer and have reduced recharge. Also worth noting, they have rolled in ground targeting to all consecrations. All consecrations are now ground targeted, which is very good. This trait is a staple of Guardian in PvE. One of the reasons people take Guardian in PvE is for consecrations. Guardians will most time have 1 or 2 consecrations on their utility bar at any given time. This makes those way, way better. We like it. Master of Consecrations is a good trait. When you know you don't need it, take Unscathed Contender. When you know you're going into an encounter where you need it, you take Master of Consecrations. I imagine we're going to see Guardian players swapping between the two as needed. Master level Supreme Justice. Virtue of Justice causes burning more frequently, and when activating it, the burn duration is increased. This is going to be very useful because, as I said, it's going to be hard to maintain 100% burn uptime since burn stack in intensity rather than duration. So instead of activating your Virtue of Justice and having perma burning, as all 5 people in your party get it and hit the boss, you're going to activate Virtue of Justice. The boss is going to get 5 stacks of burning, and then they're going to go away in a few seconds. This makes Supreme Justice really, really good. It allows you to keep up burning passively every 3 attacks, which means probably every about 2.25 seconds you'll get another burning. With Supreme Justice, that means that, generally speaking, you're not going to want to activate Virtue of Justice because it'll actually lower your burn uptime. Next trait is Conditional. Activating Virtue of Resolve removes conditions from nearby allies. When you need it, this trait is amazing. Absolutely amazing condition removal. So we like Absolute Resolution. However, you don't always need it. Not every dungeon, not every boss, not every encounter requires condition removal. When you don't need it, obviously you want to default to Supreme Justice just because it makes your DPS better. But when you need it, when you know you're going to need it, switch to it. And Virtuous Mallet. This is new. Hammer attacks have a chance to slow enemies. Hammer abilities have reduced recharge. The hammer abilities having reduced recharge is pretty meh for PvE. However, the new functionality of 33% chance to inflict 3.5 seconds of slow on a 10-second internal cooldown could be super good. If you're fighting a difficult boss who has very fast, hard-to-dodge attacks, like the Arch Diviner and Fractals, or Mossman, or some of the HOTW bosses, keeping slow on them will increase your team's survivability quite a bit. I imagine if they ever came out with raiding or super, super hard content, Virtuous Mallet would be a staple trait. As of right now, it's not strictly needed for any of the dungeons, and Hammer is kind of a secondary thing. But I think the day might come where super hard content comes out, and Virtuous Mallet and the Hammer in general will suddenly become a very, very in-demand item. Grandmaster level. Most times in the old meta, we never went this far. Let's see what our options are now. Virtue of Justice passive effect no longer burns your target, but instead burns the area around you each time it activates. That's pretty cool. I like that. If you're fighting a bunch of trash mobs, you will inflict the burning quite a bit more frequently. So we like that. It'll help keep burning up time for your party. Battle Presence. Nearby allies gain Virtue of Resolve's passive effect. Now, if it seems to me on here that they're saying it'll give your party passively 15% extra endurance regeneration. If that's the case, Battle Presence is amazing. Since Vigor is a 20% endurance regeneration increase, here's a trait that is going to give us 15% endurance regeneration, basically giving perma vigor to our party. That's good. That's real good. If that is the way it indeed works, if it does pass on that 15% endurance regeneration to your whole party, this trait is exceptionally powerful. And then lastly, Indomitable Courage. Activating Virtue of Courage breaks stun and grants stability to affected allies. Virtue of Courage's passive effect triggers more frequently. We don't care about the passive effect. What matters here is that it's an on-demand stability for 3 stacks of stability for your party. This is super powerful, of course, and when you know you're going to a fight where you need it, you just trait for it. Otherwise, our default is going to probably be Permeating Wrath, although if Battle Presence works the way I think it does, and that you get 15% endurance regeneration, this is looking good. We're going with Battle Presence. So, Virtues, still very powerful line, still has a lot of good traits that we like. And based on what I've gone over, I think you guys can guess what I'm thinking the build might look like, but we'll go over it anyway. Alright, so here's the build. Guardian DPS support, Greatsword Mace Focus. We take Fiery Wrath. We're going Zeal, Honor, and Virtues. We take Fiery Wrath, 10% damage against burning foes. Zealous Blade, Greatsword cooldowns, Greatsword damage. Symbolic Avenger, more damage to enemies standing in symbols. Mace cooldowns with Invigorated Bulwark, Empowering Might for a little extra might for our party. And Writ of Persistence, longer lasting symbols. Unscathed Contender, Absolute Resolution, although obviously I said you can switch that out. And Indomitable Courage, obviously I said you can switch that out since it's a utility trait. What are we doing with this build? We are using all these traits and abilities to keep 100% symbol uptime to maximize our personal DPS. How do we do that? So just a quick theoretical DPS rotation. You're going to start with the mace symbol every fight. Start out with the mace symbol. Swap to Greatsword. Do Whirling Attack, Leap of Faith. Basically, sit there when the symbol is about to run out, the mace symbol is about to expire, drop the Greatsword symbol, do a bunch more damage. When the Greatsword symbol is about to go away, you swap back to mace. Your mace symbol will be up. You drop the mace symbol. You do a bunch of damage. You can't mace until the mace symbol comes up again. Drop the mace symbol, swap back to Greatsword, and keep doing more damage. And keep repeating the cycle. That will give you the most symbol uptime that you can get, and it will be incredibly powerful. As I said, there's a couple traits, especially in Virtues, that you can switch around based on whether you need them or not. But I think this is an interesting core of a build. It's very, very high DPS. It contributes a lot of vuln to your party, which is something that people will want. And all in all, it has a lot of utility. As you might know, as I mentioned in the Virtues line, if we can get the passive endurance regeneration for the whole party, this is going to be a killer trait. So I want to just posit this out there. This could be a really good build. I don't know if it'll be the meta or not, but it seems good. It seems better than most of the other Theorycraft. One thing I do want to mention yet again is that if that torch trait is indeed insanely powerful and lets you spam Zealot's Fire, then a torch camping sword mace build will be the best thing that you can be doing. But that remains to be seen if it's going to function that way. But for now, I like this build. I would play it. I think it looks fun. So that's just my preliminary thoughts. I'm sure people in the comments will have something to add. Alright guys, so that's it. That is my review of the Guardian specializations that they revealed during the live stream. As more information comes out and we get closer to these going live, I'm sure there will be adjustments and amendments. And I'm sure some of you guys have really creative ideas that I may have overlooked in the traits. So please hit up the comments and let me know what you guys are thinking. If you think I'm onto something, maybe you saw something even better than what I'm looking at. Maybe you look at the traits and you think they function differently than I imagine, which is entirely possible since we don't know exactly how they function. We only know what was shown on there, and it's easy to interpret some of those words in multiple ways. Anyway, that's it. Hit up the comments. Let me know what you think. Thanks, guys.